Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and today I want to talk to you about the books that I read in the second half of May. But before we get into that, let me first, as always, tell you the books that I read in the first half of May, so that you can then know if you want to check out my mid-month check-in, which will be, as always, linked down below and up there. And the books that I read in the first half of May were, first of all, Maigret et le Fantôme by Georges Simenon, then Alcatraz vs. The Shattered Lens by Brandon Sanderson, White Sand Volume 1 by Brandon Sanderson, then Measuring the World by Daniel Kehlmann. I read Kingdom of Gods and The Awakened Kingdom from the Inheritance trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I read The Riddle by Alison Croghan, Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie, The Trials of Apollo, The Hidden Oracle by Rick Riordan, and Upon a Burning Throne by Asher K. Banker. And for some reason, these books are a lot heavier than a stack this size usually is. There's some heavy books in there. But now let's get into the books that I read in the second half of May, which are 10 books that I had left. I think I read a total of 19 books in May, which once again was a big amount of books, almost 20, and I said I wanted to take it slower. I can't keep up with what I say. Anyway, so the first book I want to talk about is Fireheart Tiger by Aliette de Bodard. This was the May pick for my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, which is all about reading adult high fantasy books written by women or genderqueer folks. If you're interested in joining, all the links to the book club are down below, the Twitter, the Discord, everything. Our June read is The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. And I think it's Tasha Suri, right? I hope I'm not getting the author wrong right now. Anyway, this was our May read, and I won't say too much about this because it is just a novella, but it's a sapphic story set in a pre-colonial Vietnam-inspired world. And overall my thoughts, which I won't go too into in depth because I do intend to upload a full review as I do of all the book club reads, but my general thoughts are I enjoyed it, but I wish there was more, which is what I generally think with most novellas, especially fantasy novellas, because one of the big reasons I enjoy fantasy so much is the expansive world building and the expansive character work. And of course, in a short novella, you only have so many pages, you only have so many words, and so a lot of times I'm left feeling like I want more. And that was pretty much the case with this one as well, although I can still recommend it regardless. The next book I want to talk about is a recent release, and that is the first book in Sui Davis Okungbowa's The Nameless Republic trilogy, and that is Son of the Storm. This is an adult high fantasy series that is set in a world that's inspired by multiple African cultures. Sui Davis Okungbowa also is an author who grew up, I think, in Nigeria, if I remember correctly, in Benin City. I think the interview at the end, he said that he grew up in Benin City. The world building in this story is incredibly rich. The language in the story is incredibly rich. The influences, the African influences, and I purposefully say African and not Nigerian influences because Sui Davis Okungbowa said that he was influenced by multiple different African cultures, so the African influences in this book are very obvious. I especially loved the language he used because the way he writes, it is very obvious that he didn't grow up in an American or UK context, that he grew up in a country that now of course speaks English, or in wide parts speaks English, but where English was the colonial language, and where that country, those cultures, those people took English and made the language their own as well. And that is very obvious in the way Sui Davis Okungbowa writes. He also has multiple characters who, for example, speak a type of pidgin English, which I very much appreciated. I also really enjoyed the characters. I especially enjoyed the antagonist. She was such an interesting character. However, I had one problem with this book, and that is that I think I did not read this at the right time. Because as I said, this is a very rich and interesting and complex world with multiple layers. However, when I read this, I think I just didn't have the head to pay proper attention, so I think I missed a lot of things. And so I definitely want to reread this before I read the second book once it comes out, because, you know, I can see on an intellectual level what this book does, but I feel from my head I wasn't completely there and I couldn't properly connect to the book because of that. But that was up to me, that wasn't because of the book. Next, I want to talk about a book that has been on my shelf since 2015, and that is Thieves Magic by Trudy Canavan. This is the first book in her Millennium's Rule series, and I got this book when it first came out, so as I said, 2015. And in this we follow two characters who are not connected at all at the beginning of the story, and the only thing that's kind of similar in both of their lives is that they learn new things about magic in the context of where they are from, and that's kind of all I can really say about this book. Also, it's gotten darker right now. Sorry for the light change if you noticed that. But yeah, I am happy I finally started this. The reason, or part of the reason why it took me so long to get to this, is because, as you know, the Black Magicians trilogy by Trudy Canavan is one of my old-time nostalgia favorites. However, the second series she wrote that I read by her, that's not set in the same world, which is The Age of 5, I think it's called, is a series that I don't necessarily like, or that I didn't necessarily like when I first read it, and so I wasn't sure where this would fall on the spectrum. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I'm excited to continue on with the series. And so yeah, that's it about this book. So I turn on my lights and change the battery in my camera. Sorry if the frame is a little bit different, but next I have a book that has been on my shelves probably for as long as Thieves Magic. And just like Thieves Magic, this is a book that I pulled from my TBR chart, physical TBR chart for May, and that is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I don't think I have to say anything about what this is about. This is a historical fiction set in the Second World War in a village near Munich, and it's narrated by Beth. And yeah, there's a lot of rave reviews about this book, and I have to say first of all that it is very beautifully written, but first of all, I don't tend to enjoy historical fiction set during the World Wars, especially set during the World Wars in Germany, that much, especially if it's not written by exile authors or German Austrian authors. I don't know, for some reason those books a lot of times feel a little icky to me. I cannot exactly explain it. But something that really pulled me out of this story and that made it so I couldn't connect to the characters for the longest times is the use of German in this book. It gets a lot better towards the end and there's not a lot of German used anymore, but in the very beginning, Markus Zusak uses German words, puts them in the English sentences, and if you know anything about German and if you know anything about English, you will know that German and English grammar is very different. So a lot of times, like the cases or whatever forms you used for the German words would not fit into the English sentence, and it's probably not obvious to you if you're not someone who speaks German, but to me it was very obvious. And then suddenly you had like German words, but Markus Zusak put them into the ink form, like go wing, do wing, like that, and I'm sorry, we don't have that in German. Also, then German words were just mistranslated. For example, he uses watschen a lot, but for him it's something you do like in school when you hit a child with a stick. A watschen is literally just a slap. That's it. So yeah, that just kind of took me out of the story a lot for the first third of the book. And by then I couldn't really get back into the characters anymore. So even though I think this is a beautiful book to read, probably if you don't know German, if you're someone who understands German, maybe just go for the German translation right away and don't pick up the English one because it was a mess. It was a big fat mess. Next, let's go through some books I don't have to talk too long about because I do have full reviews on them. First, I have Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne, which is the first book in the Bloodsworn series. I, as I said, have a full review on this. I have a full rant review on this. This is set in a Viking-inspired world where there used to be a war between gods and then all the gods died, and now you have the bones of gods that have like special powers, and you have people who have the blood of gods who also have kind of special powers or something, and they're used, like they're enslaved by other people. It's like, it's whatever. It's a generic fantasy series pretty much, or fantasy book pretty much. And the only three things I have to say about this outside of my review is that first of all, it is capably written, so it is a well-written book. Second of all, it is one of the whitest, straightest fantasies I have read in a long time. And third, the dragon is false advertisement. So yeah, those are the things I have to say about this book in this quick wrap up. Then another book I have a review for, although not a dedicated review but a series review, is The House of Always by Jen Lyons, which is the fourth book in the A Chorus of Dragons series, and I loved this a lot. I loved it about as much as the first book, I would say, so less than the third book in the series, more than the second book in the series. There were some issues with the plot and with some decisions made with the plot and so on that I had, but overall I just highly enjoyed this. I love the characters so much. They are all so queer and beautiful and gorgeous and useless, and I love them so much. I love the world building of this. And yeah, I cannot rave enough about the series, but as I said, I do have an entire series review that I put up, I think, last week, so I will leave that linked down below and up there if you want to know any more reasons on why you should pick up this series. Also, the blue is just so gorgeous. I love this cover so much. Another book I can very quickly talk about is A Memory of Light by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. This is the final book in the Wheel of Time series, and I have finally finished the series. It has been a long journey, but I am done. And yeah, I did not like this last book. I thought it was boring as fuck. I thought it was the same thing happening over and over and over again. It was basically one huge battle, which I guess I'm fine with, but also not really. Also, I do enjoy in my series, especially when they're as long as they are here, if, you know, we get a few chapters afterwards and like seeing the fallout of what happened during all the books beforehand. You don't have to resolve everything, but I'd like, you know, to see how the characters deal afterwards a little bit. We didn't get that at all in this book, so I hated that. And yeah, I'm gonna have a series review up sometime in July probably, because my June uploading schedule is already full. But yeah, just I'm not sure yet if I'm happy that I finally finished this series or not, or if it was just a massive waste of time. Then next I want to talk about The Crow, which is the third book in the Books of Pelennor series by Alison Croghan. This was the series that I pulled from my series TBR chart to continue on with. And to be honest, I'm not too motivated to finish the last book. I still want to though, because the books have been on my shelves for ages and the series has been on my shelves for ages. But I think, while I can still see that I would have enjoyed it maybe even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, overall I'd say that I've grown out of this type of fantasy, especially since in this book we follow a different character. We don't follow our main characters, so, you know, it was just all new characters and so on. Oh, by the way, this series is about Meret, who grew up as a slave. One day there's this man who comes by where she's enslaved, and he discovers that she has magic, and so he takes her with him. And then there's also a massive fight, light against dark and so on. But yeah, I enjoyed it, but not overly much. It was just like, you know, kind of an average book, I would say. Another last book I finished in May, which I won't talk about too much because I will have a full series review up sometime in the next few weeks, is The Dragon of Ginseng by K.S. Veloso, which is the third and last book in the Chronicles of the Witch Queen. And I think I would say I enjoyed this book the most out of the trilogy, which was mostly because I felt like our main character, Talien, acted a little bit less stupid in this one. But yeah, once again forgot to tell you what this is about. This follows Talien, who is the queen of her country. She was supposed to reign side by side with a king because there was a big civil war. They were, you know, the heirs of the different factions, and so when they married and became joint monarchs, the civil war would have been resolved. However, her husband left her the day of coronation. He has been gone for 5 years at the start of the first book, and she suddenly gets a letter asking her to meet him in a different country, and if they can't resolve, you know, the whole issue they had. And so of course she doesn't do the smart thing and stay home, but she does the stupid thing and goes to meet him. And everything starts from there. Now, this last one, as I said, I enjoyed the most. I thought Talien acted a little bit less stupid in this one than in the other ones. There were also some passages in this book that were just so well written and so beautiful, where I was like, oh my god, like, I have my issues with the plot and with the characters of the story, but jaw on the floor. These pages are absolutely beautiful. And so yeah, but I will have a full review of this, as I have said, so I won't talk any more about this right now. And the last book I have for this wrap-up is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. What I expected from this was a fun, wide, romance, polyamory, bisexual, Brides of Dracula retelling. What I got from this were trauma, abuse, toxic relationships, gaslighting, like, oh my god, but in a good way. This book, it was not what I expected, like, whatsoever. As I said, I knew this only as a polyamorous, bisexual Brides of Dracula retelling, so I expected kind of a fun, maybe a bit smutty romance. However, this book went deep, like really, really deep into cycles of abuse, of trauma, of toxic relationships, what a toxic relationship can do to you, can do to your confidence, and so on. And oh my god, I loved it. I truly loved it. I cannot remember if I gave this 5 stars or not, or if it was just under 5 stars, but yeah, I can definitely highly recommend this, so go and pick this up. And that was it for this video. If you enjoyed it, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. If you have thoughts on any of the books that I talked about just now, leave them in the comments down below. All the reviews that I mentioned that I have already uploaded, not the ones that I will still upload, will of course be in the description box, as I said. Also, all the links to my social media are in the description box. The link to my mid-month wrap-up are in the description box, and the links to my book club are in the description box. So a lot of links to check out in this description box. But yeah, with all of that said, I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!